Hi everyone. I want to give you a little bit of an introduction to our marketing unit. You'll be using this in homework number 3 and also in report number 3. So we're going to be looking at marketing from a couple of angles. Remember, when you did your first report, we designed a product or service that you're interested in. We created your mission statement. We did your product or service description, your SWOT analysis, your industry analysis. Now what we want to know is who are your customers. So we need to do a little bit of a marketing analysis. And so one of the things we want to ask is, what's your area of service? Are you going to be marketing locally, regionally, nationally, or internationally? The trick is to make sure that you're matching the benefits of your product or service to the needs of your very specific target audience. One of the rules of marketing is we don't want to try and be all things to all people. Different people have different needs. And so we want to try and break things down into groups. Now, in the video on homework number 3, I'm going to talk more specifically about consumer demographics and psychographics. But for now, we're going to talk about these big groupings of consumers. Your primary group of consumers is the group of people who is most promising. They are most likely to exactly want or need what you're offering. So we're going to match your offer to their needs. There's usually a secondary group of consumers, and these are people that might be using a substitute or similar service, and they have good potential. You can probably entice them over, but you might have to do a little bit of persuading. And then the tertiary or untapped market might be a group of consumers that's never really thought about using what you want, what you offer, but now suddenly they have a need for it. So I'll give you an example. I'm making videos and I'm actually in the secondary market for video technology. It's not something that I use regularly, but when we need to go fully online for our class, then suddenly I'm a more promising, I can be moved up into that primary target market. In terms of teachers in general, almost every teacher now is learning how to do some form of Zoom or video conferencing. So the fact that we have these, and you'll recognize this from our SWOT analysis, the fact that we have this external threat that's forcing more of us to work from home means that more people in this untapped market, people who never thought of using videos, are suddenly going to move up into our primary market. So generally for marketing, we want to divide things up. Who's the most promising, who's a substitute, and who's never used it before, but we might tap into them. And then what we want also is the niche market. I'll give you another example of this from the fashion industry and hygiene, healthcare, skin and self-care products. For years and years and years, the primary or most promising market for that was women. And the secondary market might be women who bought products for men. You know, maybe a woman would buy it for her spouse or partner. And what we discovered is that men are actually a big untapped market for the grooming products industry. And so there was a big untapped market that the fashion industry finally took advantage of, and that became its own niche market. So what we want to know is what influences these markets. They're not static, they're always changing. That's what makes business kind of interesting. And so there might be social influences. For example, it's more acceptable for men to get into the fashion and grooming side of things. That was the example I just gave you. It might be economic. One of my favorite examples is that during the last economic downturn, when people didn't have maybe as much money to spend, instead of going to restaurants, we started relying more on food trucks. And that may be a trend that we see coming back with the latest economic downturn. Obviously, there are political things. It's more politically urgent now for environmental causes to influence markets. And then the other thing is what's growing in terms of what trends are growing or perhaps shrinking. I just mentioned that video conferencing might be a trend that's growing. Now, sometimes individual organizations and businesses don't have a lot of control over these external forces, but we still have to know what the market trends are. And then once we identify who our customers are, we want to build and maintain our relationships with them. So we identify our customers, we try and group them according to their wants and needs. We try and define their demographics and psychographics. I'll talk about that in the homework number 3 video. And then we can tailor our messages. And it's with social media and marketing, the more specific we get, the more we can tailor our messages to very individual tastes. We can also do marketing that attracts you to our location. That's been a strategy for malls. I put my business in a mall and then I attract you to come to the mall. And then we can also link our brand or our business to an event. That's the purpose behind sponsorships. We can link our image to a social cause or issue like the environment. So there's all kinds of ways of marketing ourselves, and you can see that we start to build our brand into our overall message. And so that brings us to branding. So we already know that you have a mission statement. How are you going to convey that mission as you do your marketing? Sometimes businesses will create what's called product personality. So think about the Geico gecko, the little lizard, has a lot of product personality. Oftentimes things that are marketed toward children, think about Tony the Tiger and Frosted Flakes. That's what we mean when we say product personality. Usually we want to make sure that our brand reflects our competitive advantage, what it is that we do better or different than everybody else. So Subway, for example, the $5 footlong, their price was their competitive advantage. And then you want to name your business, and that creates mind share. So Subway or Nike, those businesses have great mind share. The Nike Just Do It. And that leads to market share. It leads people to actually opening up their wallet and spending money. So market share is the percentage that a customer spends. Now there's market share and there's share of wallet. Share of wallet is the percent that I spend on a product. And I might divide my share of wallet over a number of different companies. So for example, my grocery budget. I like to go to Trader Joe's and I also go to Costco. Costco has a much bigger share of my wallet. So that's the percent of my spending that a company has. It's really how much of my budget they're capturing. Market share is the number of units that a company can sell compared to the total number of units sold by the industry. So share of wallet has to do with the customer. How much of that customer share of wallet are you capturing? Market share is really part of the industry analysis. How much are you selling compared to everybody else in the industry? And I invite you to read the chapter in our text on marketing for a little bit more of an in-depth look on things like market share and share of wallet. I just want to introduce these concepts right now. And then this will be on one of your little quizzes, which are now open book quizzes. I want you to understand marketing strategy. Again, we're not going to try and do the same thing for all of our customers. Marketing strategy includes what we call the 4 P's of marketing. You have a product, you give it a price, there's a place where you do business, and that might be online, it might be retail, it might be both. And then we promote it, we advertise it, and we put those together into what's called a marketing mix. Now, our strategy for marketing changes based on where we are in the product life cycle. And this is something else that you will be quizzed on. All right? Products have different stages. We introduce something and we have to do a lot of marketing and advertising to build customer awareness. When a product becomes popular, it goes into what's called growth, the growth phase. And that's when there's high demand. Your best chance for making profit is when there's high demand, but not a lot of competition. Eventually, the demand will signal, and you know this from supply and demand, it will signal more suppliers to get into the action. And that means we're going to start to have competition. When there's lots of competition, we call that a mature market. And if it's a really crowded market, we call it a crowded or a saturated market. That means there's lots of competition. Eventually, a product may go into decline. New products are introduced. Sometimes we'll have to remove something from the market or reinvent it. And so creative destruction is when we take something like your old flip phone. Nobody really buys, well, there might still be a few out on the market, but nobody's really buying flip phones anymore. We're all buying smartphones. And so that's an example of creative destruction, where we take something and we just invent a new iteration of it. So what I want you to remember are the marketing mix, the 4 P's of marketing. We have a product, a price, a place, and we promote it. Remember that. And then I also want you to remember that different products have a different life cycle. We introduce them. If we're lucky, we achieve growth where there's high demand, hopefully high demand and lower competition. Eventually, we'll be in a crowded or a mature market, and then eventually things can go into decline. Not every product will go through all 4 stages of the product life cycle, but that's the complete hypothetical model. For example, if I'm making tacos in San Diego, I'm jumping right into a mature market. All right? So that's your introduction to marketing. Again, read the chapter in the textbook. Follow along on the course homepage. You've got homework number 3 to do. You'll have a couple of quizzes to do. And I'll show you, I'll go back to our course homepage right here. Okay, so here's quiz 2, here's quiz 3, and here's homework number 3. So you can always keep track of where we are right on the course homepage.